Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Robert Jensen. He's an author and a professor of journalism at the University of Texas at Austin. Hi, Bob.
Hello, Sonali.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has angered U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry after he made vitriolic comments in a speech denouncing the nuclear agreement between the two nations. Khamenei has not yet endorsed the deal and said in his speech that the U.S.'s goals are 180 degrees compared to Iran's. His response is not unlike that of U.S. Republicans who also oppose the deal. Meanwhile, North Korea, who like Iran is considered an enemy of the U.S., has ruled out a similar style deal for itself. North Korea says it is developing nuclear weapons to defend itself from U.S. aggression. A spokesperson said this week that the country, quote, is not interested at all in the dialogue to discuss the issue of making it freeze or dismantle its nukes unilaterally, end of quote. Well, Bob, aren't such nuclear deals simply ways to preserve U.S. political and military power, even if they do make the world a safer place?
Well, I think it's obvious that U.S. power in the Middle East is on the wane, and that this deal with Iran, while sensible and a recognition of Iranian power in the region, does indicate that the U.S. understands that. Now, you have a kind of radical reactionary right-wing component of the U.S. power structure, people like John Bolton, who think we can still bomb our way into dominance. But Obama, I think, reflects a sensible approach. Does it make the world a safer place? In some minor sense, yes. But until the U.S. can recognize that its dominance is over permanently and that that's a good thing, I think we're still in a very dangerous world.
The Annie E. Casey Foundation has released a new report this morning on child poverty in the U.S. Its findings are extremely disturbing, showing that 22% of American children lived below the poverty line in 2013. That's compared to 18% in 2008. The numbers, which are based on U.S. Census data, mean that even during the recession, poverty was not as bad among children as it was in more recent years. It should be noted that the federal poverty line is extremely low to begin with, only $23,624 for a family of 4 per year in 2013. A more reasonable poverty line would include far greater numbers of struggling families. Broken down by race, a whopping 39% of African American children live in poverty, compared to the 22% average across races. Black children are the hardest hit group, with Native American children at a close second. You know, Bob, when people say all lives matter, perhaps they're ignorant of how some lives clearly seem to matter so much less in the U.S. than others, right?
It's so obvious, and statistics like this drive home how incoherent our economic system is, even by its own standards. You know, I'm a longtime critic of capitalism, but even if you take capitalism at face value, it does not live up to its own claims. What this study shows is that really about a quarter of the children, and in racial and ethnic minority groups, probably more like half, these children are out of the game from the beginning. They are not going to have the resources to compete fairly. That means this whole illusion of an opportunity society is really just that, an illusion. And that's the linchpin of contemporary capitalism. If we paid attention to these numbers, we would not only be distressed about the suffering, we would recognize that this system itself is, at this point, fundamentally incoherent.
And finally, speaking of poverty, the activist group Debt Collective pulled off a creative prank yesterday to draw attention to the high cost of higher education in the U.S. The National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, or NASFA, which represents, quote, 20,000 student financial assistance professionals at approximately 3,000 colleges and universities, met in New Orleans yesterday. During their meeting, Debt Collective claimed to win NASFA's Big Idea Award, saying that it had come up with a plan to fully fund all higher education institutions in the U.S. Debt Collective announced that the total amount of new money necessary would be as little as $15 billion a year. $15 billion is a fraction of 1% of yearly government spending. It is merely a rounding error in the federal budget, less than the government currently spends on tax breaks for just 20 corporations. Although Debt Collective did not actually win the award, they are dead serious about their idea of how to publicly fund higher education so that it is free to all. Bob, you are an academic. How amazing is this proposal?
Well, I think as long as we're on the theme of incoherent institutions, why not move to the modern university? You know, first of all, let's recognize the United States is the most affluent country in the history of the world. When we talk about free higher education or eliminating child poverty, all of these things are things that can be done easily if our moral values called for them, or at least if we took seriously the moral values we claim to hold. And I think university education is just another one. Now, I'd be the first to say that the modern American university, especially big ones like the University of Texas, where I teach, are broken institutions, both in the way they're structured and in the underlying values. And there's a lot of internal house cleaning we need to do. But for now, the idea that education is the road to opportunity, if we're going to take that seriously, that road is now pretty much permanently closed to a big chunk of society, pretty much those same quarter of the children in this country who are out of the game to start. These should shake our faith in the foundational institutions. I don't think technical fixes are the road. We need to think about our values in the institutions and how those institutions do or don't reflect those values.
Bob, thanks as always for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Sonali.
Robert Jensen is an author and a professor of journalism at the University of Texas at Austin. This is Uprising. We'll be right back.